What even are OTAs? What's the point? What are teams working on this week? And which teams might have better rosters than expected heading into 2025 on today's Peacock and Williamson Mailbag?
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look at the NFL on the field and in the front office with elite breakdowns to next-level analysis and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks everybody for hanging out with us every day, making us your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And if you're not an everyday or you're new to the program, welcome. Subscribe on YouTube and anywhere you are listening to this podcast. If you already subbed up, hit the thumbs up. So Matt, as we enter and exit OTAs and get ready for mandatory mini camps before things shut down for a little while, getting ready for official training camps in 2025, we have a question from Joey Bag of Donuts, who says simply, are any hard evaluations being done at OTAs, or is it just orientation? And maybe some teams are a little bit different, and there's rules in the NFL of what teams can't do and how much contact can be made, which didn't used to be the case. And I have some insight with the 49ers and how they do things, and Kyle Shanahan and how he's talked about what OTAs are for. I know you've been at OTAs for the Steelers as well. So what are we even doing right now, this portion of the offseason?
Yeah, I'll start it by saying, obviously, there's a lot of media at these events, and their job is to write something or tweet something. They don't just go there and do nothing. They interview players after, et cetera. They interview coaches. But there's not as much news as you think. I mean, there's not as much news that comes out of these outlets because there's not a ton going on the field. And I would urge you 9 out of 10 times, if one of these media folks who may or may not know the game and player analysis super well, I mean, they're not scouts, they're not coaches, but they have been around the game, obviously, in friendly practices. But I would urge 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10, this guy's looking great at camp. Or someone asked me the other day, Kenny Pickett looks like the worst player Browns minicamp. Probably not. I mean, because here's how I've been explaining OTAs, which is different than minicamp. I guess we'll get there. Minicamp is mandatory. OTAs are optional. So, for example, DK Metcalf, Darius Slade, TJ Watt, those guys aren't there, but they will be next week, or they will get fined. That's the same for every team. That's an NFL rule. So what I've been saying about OTAs is this is a long process, and I equate it to school. And by opening day, we all need a master's degree from a prestigious college. And this is second grade. We're past kindergarten. That was rookie camp, and this is where the weight room is. This is where your locker is. This is how we eat and how fast we practice. Tempo at practice is actually an important thing. Don't kill Pat Mahomes, please. We need him. That kind of thing. So I think we're kind of in the second grade, third grade. And I will note, I mean, a lot of teams are doing very similar things. In week 1, the Steelers practiced Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And I noticed a different tempo, aggression, level of play on Thursday compared to Tuesday. I mean, it's not massive, and maybe the common fan would be like, this all looks the same. And frankly, today, Wednesday, which is their 5th OTA out of 6, was by far the most spirited, the most football similar thing, where more team stuff, more going pretty fast. You're sitting there like it's white, like several plays look like watching a football game without blocking and tackling and pads, etc. I would assume tomorrow will be a little more, and that'll be the last day of OTAs. So everything's a little more than the other. Next week is minicamp, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, which again is mandatory. And I think at that point is when coaches will be like, I taught you this 3 times already. You got to know this by now. You know what I mean? Like, it's 5th grade. You got to know your ABCs by now. You know what I mean? Like, I expect pre-algebra or something. I mean, at least give me something here. because camp's the next thing. And despite it being 6 weeks after minicamp, camp's pretty real. Like, yes, there's the acclimation period, training camp, but we're doing real stuff here, and we're banging and backs on backers and one-on-ones and pads and all that stuff's not far off. So I keep using Steelers examples. Cam Hayward's going to chew your ass out if we get through mini camps and you can't graduate from second grade by now. You at least maybe need to get to fifth or sixth grade by the time mini camp's over. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And
if as the co-host was saying, it's like going to a rock festival and these are the two opening bands. It's it's not the big one yet, but these are the opening bands. And
I kind of equate it to math, because you can't do advanced calculations if you can't do arithmetic, right? So you have to be able to finish one process before you can go fast and start doing the next process. And
walk before you can run.
And Kyle Shanahan was asked these questions and kind of talked a little bit about this. And in rookie mini camp happens before even OTAs, because you need rookies to a level before they can even start practicing with the team. And like, this is what we do. This is when we stretch. This is how practice goes. Some college players have never had to huddle.
Right. Or take a snap under center. Right?
The huddle is one of the things you have to do. Like, we always, like, as fans, you go straight to, okay, let's play 11 on 11. The football is happening, but like, there might be a young player that can't even get out of a huddle, that's never huddled, has to call out a play so that even the teammates can start to do everything that they need to do. So there's a lot that needs to get in line before you can really start doing this. You have to chop up all the vegetables before you can start your stir fry, and you start cooking, right? You got to butcher the meat before you can cook it. And as fans, we go straight to, okay, how do you sear your steak? How do you cook it? Well, let's season it first. Let's butcher the meat, and let's get to the point where we can actually start cooking. So that's kind of a lot of the things that are happening, and then you start installing more and more stuff and installing the plays so you can run them, and then you need to run them slow so you can eventually run them fast.
Yeah, and even learning a playbook starts with, we call this formation Oklahoma XYZ. At Arizona State, you called it 32X, whatever. We're just calling formations different, personnel groupings different, everything's different. This route we called this. We're going to call it Texas because my uncle thought it should be called Texas, whatever, like that kind of stuff,
Right.
To learn the terminology, and
not the greatest time to evaluate.
It's awful.
I think there's some competing still going on for players. How hard are you practicing? How hard are you trying? Are you picking up things? Do they have to keep repeating things to you as a player? A lot of mental reps going on. And, I think one of the evaluations is like, okay, this guy's fast, or this guy's really big.
Yeah.
Sometimes 6'5", 310 looks massive. And sometimes another guy's pretty close. He's 6'4" and 5'8" and 309. And you're like, well, this guy looks way bigger than that guy does, even though their numbers on the sheet are pretty similar. And sometimes you're like, oh, wow, this guy's massive, or this guy's fast, or this guy really plays fast. Look at how he gets in and out of his breaks. I know he runs a 4.5, but he looks faster on the field, even without pads on, than this guy who ran a 4.3.
I'm sure I've said this before, but I'm about to turn 52 at the end of the week, and I am 6'0", about 280. That does not mean I am an undersized NFL defensive tackle.
You're an oversized pickup basketball player at the Y.
Exactly. That added 50 pounds since then, or whatever. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you're 100% right. They don't all look the same, but you could, little things, like I'm asked a million times about Roman Wilson, who basically did nothing as a rookie. He looks good out there. He's small, he's fast, he's explosive. This is a great forum for him. Okay. Yeah. I mean, like, he doesn't look terrible. He's moving abruptly.
I think of a couple of references just because obviously I cover the 49ers, and I think back to AJ Jenkins. And I remember AJ Jenkins like running routes even before he was a bust of a player. And I think he had one catch, or was it 0 catches? I don't know, as a first round wide receiver. Right.
As bust can be.
Right. He
Dolly Parton bust.
Yes. He's running routes and he can't even stay on his feet. Like, he can't cut. And you're like, what is going on right now? Like,
this is when the coaches go, they all look at each other like, what did we see in him?
Yeah. What's going on here? I know he ran a 4.37, but this dude he literally can't turn. Like, he can't be on his feet and run a route. And
that happened in recruiting a lot.
Yeah.
Boy, this dude changed a lot since high school.
Yeah, some guys are great athletes,
puberty,
and not great football players. That for sure happens. I think you get some clues, that stuff. I remember watching Blaine Gabbert throw footballs, and it's like this dude throws a sinker. How are you supposed to catch a ball that wants to hit the ground?
Yeah, it's a split finger fastball.
Yeah, and it's like the ball comes out weird. There's some things you can tell, but we get a little weird and actually tomorrow's episode, let's tease that real quick. Spencer German, the host of Locked On Browns, is going to join us tomorrow. Awesome. Another really good quarterback competition, not just a 2-man competition, maybe a 4-man competition there. And they're keeping stats in OTAs. It's so, which is ridiculous,
that I don't get.
Which is ridiculous, but we'll talk about it with Spencer German. And I think there are some things you can gain from it though. And those things about the Browns and their quarterbacks specifically, like who's going in what order. And things like who's playing with who. I think those are some things you can learn and can evaluate from Browns camp and a lot of camps around the NFL. More questions to get to.
Super quick thing I want to throw in is something that also is happening in a negative way and is really hard to find out. And even if you're a big time insider of the team, you still not find it out. In the position rooms, the tight end coach might be like, I told this guy this exact same thing 6 times already, coach, and he doesn't get it. I'm a little worried, right?
You might need that red shirt year to just for everything to really
learn. You
don't get it at all because that's when year 2, year 3 you get cut.
Mm-hmm. And 1 or 2 of those guys get in a game and they're perfect, right. But they just get
bad practice players. And then
I don't know what makes this dude tick, coach, but it wasn't the player I thought he was coming out of Missouri.
What teams are going to be better than expected based on what we think about their rosters today and more from the Peacock and Williamson mailbag next. This episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. The NBA playoffs, they're in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, season, series, changing momentum shifts, can't miss moments, whether it's game-winning shots, breakout players. There's never been a better time than right now to get in on the action. And FanDuel makes it super easy to stay in the game before tip-off, live during games, player props, performance trends, same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. And maybe you got to read on a little parlay, something that's heating up during a game. Why not back it up with one of those same-game live in-game parlays? And how about an extra $200 in bonus bets? That'll add to the excitement. All you got to do is win your first $5 bet. So hit that first $5 bet, and you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets to play with. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. We'll go to a question from Matt on Twitter. He says, 2 years ago, people thought the Rams were a bottom 5 roster, and last year it was the Broncos. Which team expected to draft high next year has a better roster than we think and could push for the playoffs this year?
I pulled out a couple teams and kind of wanted to start in the AFC South. Now, I don't think Tennessee qualifies, and I'm not going to take all bottom feeders, but if the Texans' O-line is actually average, could they be one of the best teams in the league? Could they go from tier 2 or 3 to tier 1? Maybe.
Yes.
I think so.
Yeah. I'm actually projecting them to, there was the plexiglass principle.
Yeah.
And then, okay, now here's that jump. Here's that trajectory that we thought they've been on last year. And obviously some things have to come together. That's absolutely one of the teams because I believe in the coach. I believe in the quarterback. I believe in a lot of the talent on the defensive side of the ball. They're good on the defensive line, right? So O-line holds up. Look out for that team.
Agreed. I was also going to say the Colts. I don't want to get too far into it. If you didn't listen to the episode this week with Colts stuff, dig in because I think they don't have a lot of holes. I think they got a lot of weapons. I think the defense coordinator change would be huge. Quarterback questions, of course. I think Jacksonville also qualifies. I really think they have found a coach, and maybe I'm putting the cart before the horse there. I'm not ready to jump off the Trevor Lawrence train. I think Hunter and Thomas could be the best wide receiver tandem in the league in a year or two, like Chase Higgins or better. I think that there's stuff there to like. And I don't think the defense is terrible, particularly in the front 7. So as a team that picked early, I know they traded up to 2. I think they could be better than expected. Again, I'm not saying they're going to win it all.
Right.
The Giants.
Can we pause on the Jaguars for a second? Because
Yes.
they're an interesting one. They're one of the teams that immediately came to mind.
Okay.
They've been that team for a while.
Yeah.
They never do it. So
right.
Is the coach the final thing? Is having a superstar draft pick the final thing that really flips things? I'm starting to get a little bit more cynical about, Trevor Lawrence and the Jacksonville Jaguars, because they've kind of been that team for a while and never have quite completely flipped that switch.
Yeah, I put a graphic out the other day that I don't know where I found it, but just most regular season wins since the year 2000. Only the Browns are worse than the Jags. Like sometimes there's just organizations aren't winners. And that frankly worries me about even mentioning this next team, and that's the Giants. But I think their roster, other than quarterback, isn't terrible. Their D-line, I think, is kind of awesome. I think their defense as a whole is top 10. I think Neighbors is a star. You get Thomas back at left tackle. Even if Russell Wilson can be quarterback 20 or 22, that's a heck of a lot better than DeVitoing it up. But boy, they have an awful schedule. I mean, I'm not saying they're going to win a lot of games, and they never do, which isn't great either. Arizona also comes to mind.
Arizona was the one that I was thinking of.
Okay.
And, you look at the examples that were given and you think about the Broncos, the Rams. Well, what do they have? Well, the Broncos found their quarterback and they have a superstar coach that's been on a Hall of Fame path. And we already know that the thing that the Rams did have, despite maybe a roster that fell apart, the stars and scrubs, and they had to rebuild, and they had the coach and the quarterback. Right. Mm-hmm. So which teams have a coach and quarterback and then have added other talent around it, even though they might still have some needs? And I think the Arizona Cardinals, I don't know that I would put Kyler Murray in a category with Matthew Stafford necessarily, but he's a super talented guy. And now they've got that program. They've had that program together for a couple of years, and they've got a better quarterback situation. That I'd take Kyler Murray over any of the Giants quarterbacks, right?
Right.
They've had a lot of pieces on the defenses where they needed the most help. They've got some young playmakers on offense. They got a good offensive line. So, okay, good lines, quarterback. I believe in the coaching staff. Why not the Arizona Cardinals?
Yeah, even the back seven, their defense isn't terrible. Budda Baker's one of the most underrated players in the league. Maybe Will Johnson's the guy we saw at Michigan. I love that they have a million defensive linemen. The O-line isn't as bad as you think. I think Paris Johnson's the next great left tackle. McBride and Harrison, it could be a pretty formidable pairing. James Conner's going to do what he does and get you yardage. I agree. I would throw the Raiders in there too, because now I think they have ownership, GM, coach, quarterback is in way better place. I just don't know that back seven and coverage is. I still think that they're a secondary away.
Just to be sure that you have a respectable head coach quarterback combination, which is so important. And it's going to lead into our final segment here. And it's kind of becoming our thing this summer with listeners. And I love it.
I like it. It's a fun game.
Listeners giving us, okay, either or, you got to pick one head coach, quarterback, GM combination. And we got a couple of them coming up on today's show. And that combination a lot better right now with the Las Vegas Raiders. And Tom Brady, by the way, has mentioned how he was hands off, because we talked a lot about the draft process and we hadn't really heard from Tom Brady. He's like, is Tom Brady picking the next quarterback? How involved is he? And he's been trying to be like arm's length. And I don't know if maybe he's actually been more involved than he's letting on, but he tried to make it seem like, look, I'm a part owner and they operate without me. And I'm not really that involved with the day-to-day and what goes on there and things like the draft.
I mean, I'm sure he has other interests and isn't grinding every snap of Geno Smith or every draftable quarterback. I mean, I doubt he's doing that stuff, but I bet he's saying, I think these traits are most important, or, I like building an organization this way, take it for what you want,
Mm-hmm. Next, quick quarterback question here about Cam Ward and why isn't he like at the top of the hype machine right now going into 2025? And then we've got some either ors, some QB versus head coach versus GM questions and combinations coming up next. finishing up the Peacock and Williamson mailbag this week. You can always get the questions in at BD Peacock, at Williamson NFL. Drop a question in the YouTube comments. Got a YouTube question coming up here in a moment as well. I want to go to first Michael, who asks the question, is Cam Ward the least talked about number one pick overall in recent memory? Why is that? And I think he absolutely is. And we kind of mentioned how that is. And we're reviewing the draft, and it's like, okay, Cam Ward was the number one quarterback. Okay, but then let's talk about the rest of the draft and number two and trades up and like everything else is more exciting. I can't remember a time when the number one overall pick quarterback was less talked about than Cam Ward. So I think Michael's absolutely right here. As for the reason why, is it just because so early in the draft process, there was no peer for him because it was like, oh, Shedeur, because that was kind of the conversation to December. It was like, Shedeur, Cam Ward, this could be fun. And then once everyone realized it was going to be Cam Ward, it was like, okay, turn the page. What's next? What's number two going to be?
I think most of it I don't understand why. Tennessee's not the highest profile team. I mean, it'd be different if he's going to a New York team or something like that, or Caleb to Chicago last year, frankly, better fan base, bigger city, etc. Maybe that's part of it. I think a little bit of it is he's not Trevor Lawrence or Arch Manning, where when they came out of the womb, they were expected to be the first overall pick, and you could see it coming from a mile away. He kind of snuck up on people. This time last year, he wasn't on the tip of everyone's tongue. He transferred a couple times, wasn't even highly recruited. So people didn't know him all along, and it wasn't as anticipated. Unfortunately, I think what steals so much of his luster is the Shedeur nonsense. That's been the better story. That's been the better thing for media people to write and talk about, which turned into, I guess we'll talk about him a lot tomorrow, but isn't nearly as important as the first overall pick, franchise quarterback Ward.
We talk way more about a fifth round quarterback
right.
Overall pick this summer. And it's going to happen. We do have to get Tyler Rowland of Locked On Titans on though, and get his thoughts on what the early returns are and how Cam Ward looked, just those initial impressions, just physically how he carries himself and some of the things you can garner from things like OTAs and mini camps. And we will sure be talking more about Cam Ward this summer and the Tennessee Titans when we have Tyler Rowland on the show. Okay, we got some either ors here, Matt. Let's go to YouTube. And Tommy has a really good one here, and I think it starts to test us a little bit more difficult. Someone dropped one on us last week, and it was, Josh Allen was just one of the 6 names, and so that was just too easy. It was like, well, Josh Allen, I don't care. I'll fire the bad GM and head coach you gave me, and I'll hire some different ones. So this tested
my firstborn for Josh Allen,
right?
in my left foot, you're right, whatever.
So Tommy, on in the YouTube comments, make sure you're subscribed on YouTube, by the way, and say hi to us there, and drop some questions in for our mailbag. Would you rather take Howie Roseman, Kyle Shanahan, and Brock Purdy, or Chris Grier, Brian Schottenheimer, that's the Dolphins GM, the new Cowboys head coach, and Joe Burrow? If QB is the most important, do you take on a bad head coach and bad GM to get him, or take the borderline top 10 QB with a top 5 head coach and GM?
Now, I'm going to start this by saying, I don't know if the Bengals have a good GM and head coach.
So here's my angle on this. We basically seen what Kyle Shanahan and Brock Purdy are together, right?
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Been to a Super Bowl.
Right.
Burrow, with what they've had, have also been to a Super Bowl.
Right. They're pretty equal.
And both teams have kind of been ups and downs. So this is pretty even. We know how the Purdy-Shanahan dynamic works. You throw in Howie Roseman, making the picks.
Swapping out Roseman for Lynch gets you over the hump.
And I think Lynch is fine. And I just think that there's a different style there where Roseman's in charge of making the picks. I think Kyle Shanahan and the coaching staff is a lot more in charge of making the picks than John Lynch is in San Francisco, because, it's just like, you see that a lot. It's like, who was hired first? The coach is in charge, or the GM hired the coach, and the GM's in charge, right? And those two organizations are different from that regard. And I would rather see it where the GM is making picks for Kyle Shanahan, because they've done some weird stuff there with some.
Which I think would be the case if it was Roseman.
Yes, right.
You build the roster, I'll coach it.
He only does the managing, the general managing. He only does the head coaching, and the quarterback does the quarterbacking. But we know that could work well, and that could be a Super Bowl start.
Yeah.
I would still probably
knock you on the door, at least.
I would still, and we're testing this theory, I would still lean towards Burrow And I would, again, it's not as slam dunk, but it's similar. It's still the same answer as the Josh Allen one was. I'll take the better quarterback. And as good as Brock Purdy is, I think Burrow is better. And I will, I'll figure it out I'll get a new GM and a new head coach, because I'm not married to the worst. Like, if I only can have them and I can't fire them, then maybe we'd have to have a conversation. But if this was a real thing, it's like, which team do you want to own? I'll own the Burrow team, and I'll find a new head coach and GM if I need to.
I mean, I think for this game, we have to say you have to keep these players and coaches for at least a year.
Yeah.
Or you're going in, they're going to be 2025. Yeah. Or, and
1 year. I'll take a bad year with a bad coach with a good quarterback. So it'd have to be like 3, 4, 5 years.
I really think this one that we're kind of seeing in practice. Would you rather be the Niners or the Bengals? In some degree, it's what they're asking. Now, what I would argue on the Shanahan, Purdy, Roseman side is, I don't think the Niners would have drafted a kicker in the 3rd round. I think the Niners would have had better drafts and would be better on both lines of scrimmage if Roseman were the GM. Now, they might not have McCaffrey or whatever. I mean, their roster wouldn't look the same, but I bet their construction would make a little more sense to me in terms of big people and less weird mid-round picks that the Niners have done over the last couple of years. You
wouldn't have a bad coach and a bad quarterback that you couldn't win with. And with Burrow, you just still might be in that spot.
I still take the Burrow side, but this one's closer.
It's closer, and I still take the Burrow side as well. We've got another one.
But I worry the Bengals are holding Burrow back.
That happens for sure.
Yeah, right.
And I'd also rather be in the NFC with Burrow than the AFC with Purdy.
Oh, yeah. If you get to choose your conference, you always take the NFC.
Let's do this just really quick. So take everything the Bengals are exactly, put them in the NFC West the last 5 years. Take everything the Niners are exactly, put them in the AFC North for the last 5 years.
I don't think it would go as well as the Niners have.
And I think it would go better for the Bengals.
Yes. I don't know they'd be as successful as the Niners, but they'd win their share of games over the Burrow era.
And I'm just thinking about the playoff gauntlet has been easier in the NFC than the AFC.
Yeah. And playing the Ravens twice a year is not fun,
No, that's not great.
Right.
Last one here. This is not exactly head coach, quarterback, GM, but this one's from Mark on Twitter. Would you rather have Tua, Penei Sewell, Kyle Shanahan, and Monty Osenfort, or Trevor Lawrence, Jalen Carter, O'Connell, and Adam Peters?
Pretty equal. I think Sewell versus Carter. Speaking of arithmetic and math and grade school, remember how you could like cross out these on top and cross out these on the bottom because they're equal? Like when you're doing fractions.
Right.
Yeah. Like
by this, like Shanahan versus O'Connell. I think O'Connell's a really good coach, and I think Shanahan's a really good coach.
I think I'd pick O'Connell, but maybe because I haven't seen him fail at the top level yet, and that's because he hasn't gotten there.
Monty Osenfort and Adam Peters, both young, I think really well-respected, good GMs. I'm fine there, and they kind of cross themselves out.
They kind of cross each other out to me.
And again, it becomes quarterback. Tua versus, let's give me Trevor Lawrence.
Does Sewell and Carter cross each other out?
I would take Carter just because I value that defensive lineman more. But, man, it's so close, and I wouldn't even fight you. No, I'll just take Penei Sewell.
I'd say I think those all pretty much cross each other out. Did you say you prefer Tua to Lawrence, though?
No.
I do not.
No.
I would rather build around Lawrence.
I'd take the Lawrence side. And I think Lawrence with O'Connell would be really fun.
Yeah.
And I think very highly of Adam Peters. We've already seen what he's done in 1 year. Like Washington last year was a perfect example. Like, man, you get those big things right. Now you're
all
a great.
Falls into place.
Now you're an awesome football team all of a sudden, right? Right. You like your coaching staff. You got a good GM. Wow, how different does that feel?
If you took Darnold out of Minnesota last year and put Lawrence in, what would that have looked like?
It would not have been. It couldn't have been worse. It could have.
No, I think it'd been better.
As good or better, right?
I think we'd be talking about Lawrence like, oh, he's a top 10 quarterback for sure. I'm sure Tua would have done fine there too, but I'd rather see Lawrence.
Yeah. And I would lean the stud D line over the stud O line just because I think one singular player can make a bigger difference because you still need 5 good offensive linemen.
That's kind of what I was leaning to. Tackles are harder to find than defensive tackles, studs.
Yes.
But I can live with a B- tackle where I don't want a defensive front full of B-. I'd love an offensive line load with 5 B-.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would not like a D line with 4 B-.
Yeah.
I need an A. I need a velociraptor.
Again, all of those other 3 options at GM, head coach, lineman are close enough to cancel themselves out. And, I think even with a fully healthy and you don't have to worry about concussions to it, I'd still take Trevor Lawrence.
I like that he's put a new wrinkle in it, though, of one Carter versus Sewell don't play the same position.
Yes.
Like someone could throw us a curveball and be like, well, what if you added Barkley to that team and McConkey to the other one? You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to take the running back, but at some point I'm going to take the running back,
The Madden curse, by the way.
Yeah.
Barkley.
Would you rather Minka Fitzpatrick or Barkley, as your 5th guy? Well.
Normal stuff. Appreciate all the questions.
Get creative with us, though, folks.
Yeah, apologies the ones we did not get to. Have some fun and hit us up on Twitter or in the YouTube comments with those questions for next week's mailbag. And subscribe while you're there. Matt and I back tomorrow. We're talking Browns. And then Friday, 2nd and 3rd year breakout players this season in the NFL on this week's Peacock and Williamson.